Welcome back to DDB 101. And in today's video, I'm going to show you a quick demo regarding how can we use DDB to debug the crash or to investigate the assertion failure. Let's jump right into the examples. Here, I already have an example where I manually engineer a crash case here. However, it kind of replicates the real situation where you want to debug case where it actually crashed and you want to understand what happened, why the crash happens. So let's first take a look at the example. So here again, I have a server. Then we also want to start a client. Here, we don't want to attach to DB for now. I just want to show you how this thing reacts. So if I send the request through the client, you can see there's the arrow happened on the client. If we go back to the server side, you can see it received a segmentation fault. The problem here is like whenever we receive a segmentation fault, there's no additional information here. So we want to understand what's happening, where the segmentation fault actually happens from the perspective of the code base. Here, we can just use DDB. Let's first start DDB. Then let's again start the server by attaching it to DDB. Here it is attached. Let's first continue the server. Now, let's go back to the client. And again, attach the client to DDB as usual. Here, it is attached. Let me, before I continue the execution, let me first open this panel so that we can show all the call stack. And minimize this a little bit. Then let's hit continue. So you can see the VS Code directly jumping to the point where the segmentation fault happens. Here, if I close the terminal, you can see a bigger window for the editor. Here, you can see this line actually caused the segmentation fault. You can also view this information from this call stack view. For example, here, for this particular frame, there's a label that says paused on signal 6seg. It stands for segmentation fault. And in this case, if you actually look at the code, you can see this is clearly a segmentation fault because you're trying to modify a null pointer. And in this case, it's just a manual engineered error. But it happens a lot in real world where you commonly have some issue which actually causes a segmentation fault. And it's really hard to debug because you are in a distributed settings. You don't know which one crashed and why they crashed. With DDB, you can capture the full state of all process. And whenever one of them crashed, the DDB can lead you directly to the segmentation fault point where you can examine the code execution and all the data. For example, here, you can even check this pointer. For example, here, it says null pointer, essentially. Now, let me stop this session for now. Let's try to take a look at another example. Let's first comment out this segmentation fault issue. Here, on this line, we can see we also add an assertion point here. Assertion is commonly used in the code base where you want to guarantee some property should be satisfied. If it's not satisfied, it means there's some issue. All right. So in this case, I inject a somewhat incorrect assertion, but let's use this assertion as an example. Here, essentially means whenever we receive any string which has um, more than or equal to 2 word, we're just gonna say the assertion fails. Let's see how it works in real world. Let's first recompile the code base. Let me maximize the terminal. Okay, now let's start the server. First, let's do not attach to DDB at all. Server starts. Now, let me go back to the client. Again, we don't want to attach DDB for now. You can see here, it still gives error. And if we go back to the server side, you can see there's the message printed out to the console, says assertion failed. However, this message can missing a lot of detailed information. It only says assertion failed, but it do not give you more detail regarding what kind of state they have or on what kind of variable they have when the assertion failed. So this causes a lot of inconvenience. However, DDB can help with this issue. Let's start DDB again. Now let's open the server and attach to DDB. Then we continue the execution for the server. Then switch back to the terminal for the client. We also want to attach the client to the DDB. Client is attached. Now let's continue the execution. You can see it immediately jumped to this frame. And for this particular frame, it also says paused on signal, sig abort, meaning this sig abort happening on this thread. Let me minimize this window so we can have more space to view the call stack. Here, if we look down to the call stack, for example here, this frame says assert failed. It's actually an internal call. Let's go a little bit above here. Actually, maybe, yes, let's take a look at this frame. This frame is where the assertion failed. In this case, this is a pretty simple example, so you can clearly understand why this assertion failed. However, sometimes things can be really complicated in real world. For example, you don't really know what's the request for the text. Here, you can actually examine the data. For example, let me first add this to the watch panel. Now, let me try to print out the string for this thing. So you can see here, the string says hi world, which means we have two words in this sentence. So this assertion definitely gonna fail. You can also examine this variable. It says 2. So this is really good, or this is really convenient for you to debug the assertion failure and to examine all the local variables or even other global variables for the program when the assertion failure happens.